let's read the last one. If you'd like, you're more than welcome to take a seat, please.
That's good.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable.
I guess the great brains.
I wouldn't even know what it was if I pulled it up. I wouldn't know any different about that than.
We'd have had a creeper out of it underneath it. I don't know, I like that. It's pretty cool to see the differences.
Oh, yeah.
I used to work on it, so.
Oh, you did? So like when you open it, is it like an engine or is it like?
No, it's mostly just like the computer. There's a hydraulic Yeah, it looks like you can actually get to stuff though, which is not.
She should be right there.
You know,
Yeah.
you can get a wrench in places.
Were they charging $9,000 to change the oil cap?
You ready there? Well, welcome one and all. I will now call this regularly scheduled meeting of the East Helena Board of Trustees into session. And the first item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Very much appreciated, especially with it being a holiday for some individuals. Taking time out of your day to come and join us is very much appreciated by the board and the district. For the board this evening, we have tonight's agenda. And are there any questions or comments from the board on this evening's agenda? Okay, seeing none, hear the public. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on non-agenda items. On the back of this evening's agenda are guidelines for addressing the board on such items. So at this point in time, if any individual would like to speak to the board about an individual item that is not on the agenda, then this would be their opportunity to do so, and I would invite you. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to reports. And the first item out is our student report. And I will turn it over to our student representative, Brooke Harris.
Okay, so major thing that happened last week was homecoming, obviously. So just going to talk about that for a little bit. So homecoming week, there were many events that happened throughout, dress-up days, a lot of students participated. And then we had a pep assembly on Friday, where a lot of competitions were held, and then we had an overall competition of like who had the most spirit in our high school, and that was for being the loudest, dressing up throughout the entirety of the week, and the seniors won. Then the parade after that, which was very successful, and then the volleyball game versus Lockwood, and then right after that, the football game, where they ended up beating Lockwood. Then on Saturday, another volleyball game versus Hardin, and then the homecoming dance. Overall, homecoming week was super great and a great environment for the new freshmen to be a part of, and it was overall just a great week. Just some other things. So I would like to give a shout out to senior Jack Taylor for being the MHSA athlete for his outstanding performance during the game versus Glendive. Another shout out is to the golfers that made it to state, and then for the girls flag football team for winning divisionals and making it to the second round in state. That's all I have for this one.
Okay. Any questions for our student representative? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to administrators' reports. And first up on the agenda is Paul.
Sure.
I'm looking, and where is Paul?
Yeah, so obviously you guys have got my report there. The only thing that kind of wasn't really on there, as we sort of wrote up last week, was the homecoming stuff we just talked about. We had an admin meeting this morning, and we sort of talked about, you know, how we can make things better and a little bit safer. in terms of different things that were going on. But overall, it was really successful. The dance was really good. Yeah, can't complain too much. And obviously, next year we'll just try and make things bigger and better.
Okay. Any questions for our principal from East Helena High? How about the vice principal?
So you guys have my board report. The thing I want to really highlight is that very first graph that's in there about the tiers in PBIS or behavior support. You'll see that 96% of our students are in that tier 1, meaning they don't have any office referrals. Moving up into our tier 2, tier 3, I mean, you're talking about 7 kids out of 640 kids that have major incidences for the first month of school. So definitely doing really positive things. The biggest thing we've seen, again, with those in-school suspensions is just vape. Unfortunately, we have some students that have to complete curriculum for being caught on campus. And then as far as Vigilante Star Program, a huge shout out to our Booster Club. I asked them for $500 for prizes and they gave me $1,000. So we have great prizes. Kids are really excited to come into the office and get those prizes for doing what's expected. We've had 54 students recognized as doing what is expected in classes, have turned in their slips. I know more than that have been handed out, but 54 have checked in with me. And then we have 5 that have received the big Vigilante Stars, and we have major gift cards for those students who get that big Vigilante Star. The last thing that's just on my report is our Healthy Youth Development Program. Principal Kessler actually was the one who filled out the grant to receive funds. It's not a grant program, but it's grant funds, I guess, is how they're telling me to say it. But it's a person who will be able to put together an after-school program Monday through Thursday for our adjudicated youth, so those that are on probation, or students who need something healthy to do after school. And so we will be starting that program hopefully very soon and have an extra space for our high school students to be involved in something after school, and they're going to provide support for job applications, interviews, internships, really helping our students get involved in the community in a positive way.
Okay. Any questions for our vice principal? Okay, saying none. Lindsay, tell us what's going on over at EBMS.
You guys read my report, but also we're coming to an end of volleyball and cross country, and we actually start basketball, boys basketball on Monday for tryouts. Other than that, we are flowing with teacher evals. We have about 6 done, so we're moving through it, and we're just loving life over here.
Where were you driving today? I saw you, you don't need to tell me exactly, but I saw her run out of the thing and say like, I gotta drive the van, and jump in the minivan, and I was like.
I drive one student to the high school on A days, and then also drive a student home every day, Kemper and I do. So we take
Gotcha.
the Golden Goose.
I didn't, but I was, yes. It was noted that you were pulling your weight in the busing area.
Well, my one is very slow, so I like to amp him up to get moving a little quick.
Thanks, Stacy.
Following me.
Well, speaking of which,
Yeah, so the only thing I wanted to elaborate on in my report is when I was typing up about the universal tracking system, I was like, I don't really know if I'm making sense here. So just to kind of clarify on that, Catherine Senecal, one of our instructional coaches, had a really good idea. We just have this one particular grade level where it's consistently them that has the majority of our write-ups each month. So, and this was a common theme last year where I was kind of trying to be innovative and figure out ways to kind of just hold our thumb down on them. And she had this idea of just like this universal tracking system. It's basically just a Google sheet that all the teachers can see, and they just track warnings throughout the day in their classes, because a lot of the students have that mentality of like, all right, I had 2 warnings in this class, fresh start this class, I can push it a little bit, get a couple more warnings. So it's just kind of holding that accountability, so we can pull them aside like, listen, bud, I see you already have 4 warnings in a day, got a couple classes left, and just kind of talking through that to cut down on those. So it's fairly new. We're going to revisit it at our next grade level meeting to see how it's going. But looking at the sheet itself, it's been a great tool for all staff members to utilize, so. With that, I stand for any questions.
You had mentioned in your report that this was something that has been, for lack of a better word, systematic with that class.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that was identifiable with this class? Is this a result of something specific? Or is it just a personality?
It's the general nature of this class. It's nice because it's not like the heavy behaviors, but it's the busy behaviors that just really take away from a lot of other students in the classroom, what they're learning. It's just distracting behaviors, I guess, so to speak. I don't know if I point to like maturity level or anything on it, but it's those types of behaviors where it's just very busy behaviors. It's just distracting in the classroom. It's kind of the closest I can get to like a general thing. It's not like the big behaviors that we see from time to time, which is nice, but also something we want to cut down.
They're line pushers, where like they'll test you like, oh, am I almost there? So that's why they're tracking class to class.
I had a super interesting conversation last night with somebody that actually goes there in Helena Middle School, and she said she's talked to people across the board, not just their district, but also like Boulder and Montana City, and that 7th grade class is like problematic across the board. So it's kind of interesting that they're having that same issue with that same grade. Something in the water and.
Find out what was happening,
Yeah.
what was it, 12 years ago, 13 years ago? All right, thanks. Any other questions for Mike? Okay, see none, Gus.
All right, so you folks have my board report. The only thing I wanted to add on to it that I didn't elaborate was we'll have our Oveus Bully Prevention Kickoff Assembly coming up here in a couple weeks. It's always something that the K-5 grades look forward to because it's a big focus in that level to try to limit and mitigate and just prevent bullying in general. Our subcommittee met a couple times now to try to figure out some of the key details to make it run smoothly. I think we've got a fun event planned to try and incorporate some of our role models in the middle school and in the high school levels to try and come and inject some positivity as well as some energy at that event. So hopefully they have something to look forward to as they get older and what it looks like to be in middle school and high school and how bully prevention plays a role in that. So with that, I did notice that my behavior discipline report was pulled from last year, so I updated the link. Next month you should get my up-to-date one for this current school year. But as you look on the second page of my board report, that is the updated behavior data. So, yeah, any questions?
Question for Gus? Okay, thank you. Brandon?
All right, good evening. In addition to my report that you have in your packet, the one thing that I wanted to share out, which can seem a bit surface level in nature, but really has what I would say a pretty deep meaning and deep purpose, is what we did last Friday at Eastgate, and that was our Donuts with Grown-ups. So it was really cool to go into all the classrooms, see the amount of parents or grown-ups that were with their kids in the classrooms enjoying a treat, seeing what the day is all about. We have another one coming up on Wednesday, and that'll be at Prickly Pear. So you're all invited to attend. Again, it kind of seems surface level, but it's really cool to see all the parents show up to the building, hang out with their kids, see what school is all about.
Any questions for Brandon? Thank you, appreciate it. We'll now go on to trustee and committee reports of the board.
We have Sean.
Oh, hi.
Right past me, that's all right.
You're not the only one that I passed, and so I do apologize. So,
You're all
go ahead,
right.
Sean. Thank you.
So what I want to highlight is we will be having Winter Parent Night already on November 4th at the high school. So fall sports are just flying by. We'll be over in a couple weeks. My AED newsletter is up to date on the school website. That link's on the your guys' posts there. And about facility use, our facilities are booked. Janie, our secretary who handles it, does a great job. Says like figuring out a jigsaw puzzle to get everything to work out. Then the other thing I want to share with you guys is we're really working to realign our football because we're tired of getting home at 5 in the morning from Sydney or Glendive. So this is what I propose to all of our conference and division. We have 24 and we're trying to end up with 4 groups of 6. And this shows you what it would look like. Again, this is for football. Couple for you guys. Couple for you guys. So there'd be 4 groups of 6 because there's 24 teams. So it balances up. We would be with Havre, Lewistown Park, Browning, and Laurel. And on the back side of it, there was 19 responses so far, and it was 94.7% in favor of, and 4% or 5.3% to stay with what we have. So it'll really balance things up. It'll help with our travel.
Did you come up with that?
I worked on it.
Oh, good for you. That's great.
Sean, these 19 responses from who?
The head coaches, or
From-
ADs.
From the ADs.
Yeah, there's 24 of us, so 19 of, so it's pretty positive.
Okay.
And we'll make the final decision, make the thing to the proposal to MHSA in November. So we'll know.
I've always questioned this. Is there any benefit with pushing individual board members on MHSA for any of these types of proposals? Or is this a case where it's better off coming from the AD?
With the ADs, it's, you know, if there's majority, they're pretty favorable with what we want to go with.
Okay. The reason why I ask is that the Montana School Board Association has a designated member of the board
Right.
On that, and I've got a pretty good relationship with her, and I could probably squeeze a little bit of influence out of it if it was something where they may have some reservations, but it looks like it's a pretty good idea.
So, any pushes on this?
Okay.
Yeah, I know we play Sydney in 2 weeks, they're coming here. Our game time's at 6 and they're driving home afterwards, so it's an all-night drive. Which isn't good for them.
No, definitely understand. Any other questions for Sean?
So Sean, in the past, we talked about possibly being a central division as a whole. Is that still, like, will this slow any of that up if we're alleviating it for one sport versus trying to shift the whole school to a central?
The problem with it is you have the outliers like Browning, and who don't want to go to Sydney for divisional golf tracks. I mean, I'd like to see us go that way, but it's baby steps. Get them on board with the football, then, you know, because we realigned tennis similar to this, and it's, I don't know, if we can get football going, I think we can get the other ones. Like for basketball, it's not a big deal because the Eastern A plays all the divisional games at the Metro. So you know where you are every year, and it's not a bad travel for Browning, I don't think, to go to the Metro overall. Whether if they go to Dillon, if it would say we might be in Dillon or whatever. So it's just getting schools getting used to one thing at a time. And I'd really like to see it, because we can do it with most every sport, I think. It's that outlier like Browning or Laurel. So.
Okay.
Any other questions for Sean? Thank you again. I apologize for overlooking you. Didn't mean to, but I overlooked our IT individual as well. So I wanted to give Dan an opportunity to introduce our new IT hire.
Yeah, so Eric's been with us for 2 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, so I didn't want to put a bunch of pressure on him and make him submit a report for this month's board meeting, but you'll be hearing from him from here on out. But I do want to take a minute to introduce Eric Power. He's a new technology coordinator. Eric, you want to give everybody a wave? This is our school board, and Eric's jumped in from the frying pan into the fire, kind of. We've got a lot of big projects going on right now with technology, and I feel like he's working really hard to get up to speed and lead us in the right direction. Probably the next big thing coming down the pipe that board members and parents will notice is an update and upgrade to our website and our entire web hosting service, which has caused us to reevaluate a lot of the things that are on our website and how we present information to the public. We're trying to do a better job of that. It's really a huge job managing all the different components of the website. But the new, and this was a contract that was negotiated last spring by Brandon, and so that's what I mean by all the frying pan and the fire. Eric just kind of stepped into these projects midstream and has had to adapt and figure out what's going on. But the new website and the web hosting service will really update the looks of our site to something that's a little more modern to what people are used to in their web browsing experience, and it'll give us quite a bit more flexibility with how we lay things out on the web page. So we're pretty excited about it, but it's also, there's a big learning curve because all of us who manage parts of the web page have to learn the new system for editing and updating, messaging, all those pieces and parts of that puzzle. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you. I'll give the board an opportunity to ask Eric any questions, but okay, seeing none, you're off the hook this month. Okay, now we'll move on to trustee and committee reports of the board. There were a couple of the committees that did meet over the course of the last month. Their efforts will be summarized or brought forward under new business. And so other than that, there's not a lot to report as far as the committees go. One item that I was going to call to the attention relating to MTSBA 1 is that, of course, they're focusing on MCEL for this week. That's where the vast majority of their energies have been going. So you probably haven't heard or seen much as far as like Think Tank Thursdays and reports from them, but that's what they're gearing up to do. A very important note for COSBA, you probably saw that there was some pads and pens that were provided from the last one. I decided to stash them and put them on the plane for you. But the executive director for COSBA has tendered his resignation. It will be effective the end of June. So he is, and the board was aware of it, even though it was not public knowledge. We were aware that this was going to happen, and so we're going to be looking for a new nationwide search for an executive director, and I so happen to be on that subcommittee. So I will be involved with selecting the new exec director, which is kind of an honor and a little bit overwhelming for me, but I was asked to chair. And I looked at Vernon directly in the eye and I said, absolutely not. So I said I would serve, and he understood. So, any questions on our trustee and committee reports? Before I go on, Mary, I didn't catch. Would you like to sit down? You sure? Okay, we'll now go on to our strategic planning and scanning for our future needs, and keeping in mind that we do have a separate discussion on some strategic planning language that we'll be considering under item number 4 under new business. But we, as part of policy, we do discuss this item on a monthly basis, everyone, and every Monday or every meeting. And so at this point in time, I would either give the superintendent opportunity or other board members if they had some thoughts or feelings as far as the status of our strategic plan and our vision of our future. Okay. Oh, you don't know. Out of curiosity, the drop-off on our enrollment, I think you probably explained it at the previous meeting, but I noticed that there was a significant drop-off from on the high school from month to current, and I'm just curious on what the driver was.
Did you want to talk about that? I can't remember. We talked about it in admin this morning, but I can't remember the entire conversation.
Yeah, I was just, I was concerned about sort of the disparities here, but once we looked at it, there isn't any disparities to it. Because the 227 Academy's got 60 students
so
in it.
if you look at the enrollment of the 227 increases.
Actually marginally.
Yeah, it's not one for one.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have had some student movement, but
Okay.
it wasn't as severe of a drop as what we initially thought, because we didn't realize that some of those kids had transferred into the alternative school.
The other part too was the part-time students.
Yeah.
They basically took that number down as well.
Right,
So
so
there's the full-time equivalent students, right?
We have some upperclassmen who aren't taking the full class load because they've got most of the credits that they need for graduation. And so that affects that count a little bit too, is how we think Infinite Campus is recording that, so.
Okay.
Good catch. The only things that I wanted to talk about, on that note, we're gonna talk about enrollment a little bit later in the agenda, so I don't go too hard into that. I did go to the Habitat for Humanity event that was about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago out at the Kleffner barn. And as luck would have it, I got to sit at Mark Runkle's table, and Dean and I were the only people at Mark Runkle's table, so he didn't really have a choice, but he had to talk to us. So we had, I got to know Mark a little better. That was good. And if you don't know, Mark is a chief developer behind Mountain View Meadows, and just really an interesting guy. And I think he does have working towards keeping the best interest of the community at heart in the work that he's doing. And it's a unique situation at Mountain View Meadows because it's in the city of Helena, but it's in the East Helena School District, which is always very confusing to people how that overlap works. That was a very interesting event. If you didn't get a chance to read the write-up in the paper about it, they did name the new habitat development after the Rose family, who are the parents of Troy Manus and Lynn Manus, who used to be our district payroll clerk, and they're the Iris's parents, I guess. So they would be Troy's grandparents, and so that was kind of a neat tribute. So they're going to call it Rose Hills, I believe, was the name that was chosen. And that was kind of the main point of the evening, and to try to do fundraising and just talk about what that project entails. And keep in mind, it's a long ways from being final plat approved at this point. But they're still talking above 1,000 housing units on that property. And that's the one, I think Terrell and Scott and I all made it to the charrette last winter at the Habitat offices downtown. They are looking at a set aside in there for a future elementary school someday, which is, I think, shows a lot of foresight in the fact that there probably will be a lot of children in that neighborhood. There's already quite a few children in Mountain View Meadows, and so a school over there someday, and we're talking a ways down the road, is probably, on the way out there horizon for the school district. A little more immediate project that I became aware of just the other day is that at the bottom of the hill below Blue Cross Blue Shield, where all the concrete culverts are laid out and all the dirt work's going on, Dick Anderson's got a trailer parked there. And Mark Runkle's the one that told me what they were building there, and then I followed up with a guy I know, Dick Anderson. That is going to be an apartment complex, and the master design for that shows up to 316 two-bedroom apartments in that area, which probably will have a pretty significant impact on the district in terms of enrollment. I can't, it's not clear to me if that's quote-unquote affordable housing or luxury housing or what the thing is. I think if they're all that many two-bedroom apartments, they're probably looking at something trying to be a little more in the affordable realm. But we've already got one full bus going out there every day. They're hoping to start renting those apartments in January of 2026. So it's just a little over a year out before we start to see occupancy in there. The first phase is what they're building right now, and that's 108 units. And then they're saying that they won't start the second phase until they're near capacity at the first phase. So, so it's not like it's all going to happen tomorrow, but that's a pretty significant high-density development going on out there. The last piece is we did have that kind of relates to strategic planning, not entirely, but we did have a request from the folks at Heron Creek, which is out on Spokane Creek, just above Spokane Bay, out Ames Lane out there, for us to consider having the bus actually go out there to pick up kids instead of picking them up on Canyon Ferry Road. So we've been working on if and how we can make that happen. Talked to the county transportation board about it. We had to talk to the county maintenance crew about it to see what their intentions were for snow removal on that, on Ames Lane. And now we're waiting to hear from the HOA out there about what their snow removal plan is, because the bus will actually have to go into the subdivision. If you haven't been out there, Heron Creek is two big circle, and with houses all throughout there, it's a pretty big neighborhood and a pretty big project. They did build a bus turnaround in there, but it's smaller than what we need to swing one of our buses around in there without backing it up. So instead it will go in there and just go all the way around the circle and come back out. And so we need a pretty strong commitment on the part of the HOA that snow removal is going to be taken care of in there so the bus doesn't get stuck. And then, yeah, just the last thing, if you've driven out the highway to the Kleffner barn, you'll see that the Oakland Group is doing quite a bit of initial dirt work on their first part of their project out to the east of the highway as you're driving out towards the Kleffner. And I do know that they're planning to phase out Phase 5 at Highland Meadows back behind Frigidaire Elementary next summer. And their plan is to just transition right from Highland Meadows straight over into the new subdivision, which I don't know if it even has a name yet. Hopefully they don't call it the East Fields, but that's what the trust always called it. And that, if you've been reading the articles or any of the initial preliminary work, they're projecting somewhere between 3,500 and 7,000 housing units in that subdivision. And the way Gary Oakland explains it, it will be a subdivision roughly the size of the city of Livingston, Montana, that will be part of East Helena. So these are all huge plans. These are major subdivisions, and there are things that are going to develop and grow over time. It's not like it's all going to happen overnight, but it's the things that the Trust METG has been talking about are coming our way. And the METG annual meeting is also on the agenda, so I don't need to talk about it as part of this party.
Okay. All right. Any questions or additional discussion on our strategic plan and future needs? Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the insight on that. Okay, we'll move on now to notifications of retirements and resignations.
We had 3, and they are in your packet. They have been accepted on your behalf. Paraprofessional from Prickly Pear, a cook who I believe worked a day for us, and a bus driver who worked about 3 months for us and decided to go somewhere else. So.
Okay. Okay, any questions on our notifications, retirements, or resignations? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent action items. Before the board this evening, we have the consent action items, which include the minutes of our September 9th regularly scheduled meeting, approval of our former and current warrants, personnel action, and student enrollment approval for the surrounding school district students. Typically, there is no debate on consent action items. However, if any member of the board would like to discuss and debate an item separately, they can ask to do so. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve this consent action items as presented.
Can we pull personnel?
And personnel has been pulled. Are there any other changes to the consent?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda except for the personnel actions.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second for Tristan. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Moving on to the personnel actions.
Yes, we have an individual listed on there for hire who is actually a volunteer. Jan Cookson is her name, so we are not hiring Jan Cookson. Everything else is accurate in there. We got our wires crossed with the athletic director at the middle school on that. And Stacy, who has been involved in the middle school volleyball program, caught that and drew it to our attention this afternoon. So I'm just going to correct that.
And that was who again, Dan?
Jan Cookson.
Okay, are there any other changes or questions on the personnel action items?
Don't believe so.
Okay, seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the board? Oh, yeah, please do. Would you please, I would entertain a motion to pass personnel action items with the deletion of Jan Cookson.
So moved.
Motion from Tyrell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Stacy. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Now we'll go on to unfinished business. And first item is our informational item on our EPA rebate and Lion bus update.
Well, not a ton to report. We had the bus here before the meeting and took 4 board members and a couple administrators for a ride around the district on it. So it is here, functioning, it's operational, the charger's working. As I explained to the folks on the bus, we are having an issue with the heating system on the bus that's not functioning properly. We've been working with the folks at Lion to try and get that rectified, and obviously looking forward into the weather that's coming later this week, or is supposed to be coming. We're probably going to need a heating system here pretty soon, so we may have to park the bus until either warmer weather comes back or we get a technician to get here on site to take a look at it. Lion Energy did say they're going to have a guy out in Montana doing a few jobs for them around the state later this month, and so they are supposed to be adding us to his schedule to review it. But overall, the bus is working pretty good. I don't think it's unusual to have a few bumps along the way related to warranty. The last 2 Bluebird diesel buses that we bought both had major issues within the first 3,000 miles that had to be taken care of. And some of this is just, fit and finish issues, and I don't think it's anything major. It's just that it's unfamiliar to us, so we don't quite even know where to look to try and reconcile it right now. So on the rebates, I think that we've talked about before, I've just really been sitting on my hands as far as moving forward on the rebates at all for the additional electric buses until we're either convinced that Lion is going to be a reasonable partner for these units, or until we're done exploring options to possibly partner with a different provider, such as now Bluebird is building electric buses, so is International, and they both have dealers in the state. And I do have a call booked with a sales team from Bluebird for next week, and we'll be talking about the feasibility of us transferring our rebates to a different company, whether or not that's possible. So I'll be able to report back a little bit more on that next time we meet. Anybody have comments about the bus?
Questions? Nice ride.
Yeah.
It's smoother than a diesel.
It's quiet too.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I think over time the drivers will report about it, is that there's a more conversational tone among the kids on the bus, because you don't have to shout to be heard over top of just the sound of the bus operating. So it's kind of different. And the air conditioning sure works in it, just not. It was cold.
I had my coat on.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, move on now to our enrollment report. Dan?
Yeah, so we are in that, so count day was a week ago. We're in the process of finalizing our A&B and getting it reported, but and technically the deadline is Wednesday, correct? However, we kind of got put on hold by OPI because we think they're having a technical complication with how to record our little
early
Lanties.
literacy and
Yeah,
our
early
Jump
literacy
Start.
kids and our Jump Start summer program kids. And we think we have them all reported properly on our side, but OPI is not ready to take that data yet, so they may, I'm guessing we're gonna see an extension on that is what is probably gonna happen. I did wanna talk a little bit about just class numbers overall, and because I ran down through our staffing versus our enrollment by grade level to try to come up with a picture for the board of where we're sitting in our classrooms. As you know, we deleted several classroom instruction positions last year, not through layoffs, but through attrition. And one of those positions was a kindergarten. I believe one was at first grade and one was at fifth grade. And then there were some high school positions and middle school positions that also were not refilled. And in light of the new environment with non-resident enrollment and non-resident applications and the definition of quality education that we had to add to the strategic plan last spring to try to hedge against overcrowding from non-resident kids coming in. I wanted to let you know that, and these aren't rock solid, 100% accurate numbers, but they're pretty close. In the kindergarten, we're probably in the best shape. We're sitting at approximately 14 students in each classroom there, where the state standard would be 20, but the district standard is 18. At first grade, we're sitting right at 18, or a little bit below, and this is on average. It doesn't mean every class is there because the fluctuations occur with kids coming and going. In second grade, we had swelled up a little bit, but then we had a few kids move out just within the last week, and so we're sitting right at about 18 in second grade as well. And both of those grade levels, just like kindergarten, the state cap is 20, our district cap is 18. At Radley in third grade, we're sitting just under 25, where the district cap would be 26 and the state cap would be 28. Fourth grade, we're at 24 with the same limits as third grade, so 26 and 28, so we're in pretty good shape there. And then in fifth grade, and that's where we did remove a section, we're sitting just under 28. My numbers come out at 27.2, so I think that's pretty close to being accurate. When we get to middle school and high school, it gets a little harder because you're not just looking at teachers in classrooms, you got kids moving around all day. If we just take the number of teachers in the middle school and divide it by the number of students, we're looking at an average, and I did account for prep periods in this too, we're looking at an average of 24. But we definitely have bigger sections than that in the middle school and smaller sections. And the high school is the same number as right at 23, but again, at the high school we have some sections like welding and some of our other specialty classes that are in the teens. And then you've got some PE classes and some elective classes that are bumping up against 30 or possibly 31 and sometimes. So we'll work a little harder at trying to get you some concrete numbers on those high school sections. And the reason is I think it's important for the board to be informed about where our class enrollment numbers are, because next April or May probably we're going to have to make some decisions about non-resident applications again. And I just want us to be prepared for that. And that's really all I got. Oh, I would say that I did show a net increase of approximately 89 students over last year. So that's just a year-over-year increase. So that's a really nice bump for us in terms of enrolled students in A and B. But I would also say that by adding 2 sections of early K, because last year we had 1, and this year we have 3, and by graduating a fairly small senior class and enrolling a smallish but much larger kindergarten class, we would have expected about half of those students to be here anyway. So our real enrollment increase was about 45 to 50 students, which is about 2%. And that's historically what we've seen for years. And really what SMA Architects encouraged us to kind of plan for was a 2% year-over-year growth rate. And if you look at it through that lens, we're just about right on the money from where they thought we should be. So. There, now I'm done.
Okay. Dan, would it be possible, I didn't catch the numbers as you were cranking out, but could you provide the board with those ratios?
Yeah.
Classrooms?
How about if I put it in an email to you guys later this week?
That would be
so that you have it in writing?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. Yeah. I can break that up for you tomorrow.
Any other questions or comments for Dan on our enrollment status? Okay, seeing none, let's discuss our MSL.
Okay, I think I put in the supporting documents, the list of sectionals. Did that come through?
Yep.
Okay. So the only thing, so I just wanted people to be able to see that. I felt like, in terms of what they're offering this year, it's a pretty robust listing of things to learn about. So I was pretty excited about that. Scott's going, Mark's going, Marcia's going. Is that it for trustees, the three of you guys?
What's that?
To MSL, Missoula this week?
Yeah, I'm ready to.
Okay. So the only other thing I would say is our dinner on Thursday night. I moved it from the Blue Canyon down to, oh boy, a place downtown that I'll tell you what the name of it is, because it was not nearly as expensive as the Blue Canyon. Blue Canyon was a little pricey. And they wanted us to pick 3 entrees that everybody had to choose from, which I didn't want that. I couldn't handle the pressure. But yeah,
Decisions that a superintendent.
I know,
has to
well, I
make.
mean, it's a $20 cheeseburger. I'm like, that's ridiculous. So, and then it just, as you can imagine, goes up from there. So I just like, we're not doing that. So we're going down to Tamarack downtown. Yeah.
It's like underneath the bar.
Yeah.
I had to order 2 entrees, it wouldn't be enough for me.
So the cheeseburger seems a little bit more attractive now.
All right. Looks like we got Marcia, so we're ready.
Oh, we do, good. I didn't think that we were gonna be able to do this, so.
Oh, no, she says, would we be almost ready? Is she showing up there for you?
She's on.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions, comments on MCEL and the information that Dan will be providing forthcoming, then we'll move on to new business. And the first item under new business is our consideration of the East Helena High School head wrestling coach. As part of Montana Code annotated, this is something a little bit special that we have to go through. Under 2-2-302, there's certain hoops that we have to go through because one of the board members is married to the prospective coach. And so it requires 100% approval by the board with that individual trustee recusing themselves for that. So that's the reason why we have to go through this process, but it was adequately noticed in time. And so, and I believe that we have Marcia online, so that means that we do have a full vote of trustees. So Dan, I'll let you start off with it.
Yeah, so this is just a recommendation from the athletic director to rehire Tim Baird as our head wrestling coach. And Scott, you did a nice job of explaining the nepotism law. It was noticed over 2 weeks ago in the IR. We did run it again just in case because we thought we might have to do a second meeting, but hopefully this works and we don't.
Okay. There she is. Hi, Marcia.
Hi there.
Okay. At this point in time, I would entertain a motion to approve the hiring of Tim Baird as the East Helena High School head wrestling coach.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Mark Deal. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Tristan. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Saying none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Okay. All those opposed by saying no? Okay.
She's on tape, the light.
Yeah, she had a little delay there. Okay.
You got it. Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, bye.
Bye.
With 6 yeas, no nays, and 1 abstention, then motion is approved. So, thank you. Who's gonna kill you?
I didn't hear her vote, I was like,
Oh. You did say specifically in your minutes, Jill, that Stacy
she did not.
abstained.
I did.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. That's all we need. Okay, next item on the agenda is a discussion on our calendar committee report. Dan, I'll let you lead off with that.
All right, so this is a follow-up to a discussion that the board had with the calendar committee approximately a year ago, maybe 10 months ago, and that conversation is centered around a survey that the committee had done with parents and with staff regarding the prospect of a 4-day school week, which right now I believe over 180 school districts in the state of Montana are on 4-day week. And what the board asked the committee to do was, or what the committee asked for was permission from the board to research pros and cons, the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of what is involved in a district transitioning from a 5-day school week to a 4-day school week. And so tonight, that report is ready. It was actually ready last spring, but then when Brian resigned and he was the chair of the calendar committee, we decided to postpone it until now. And so we've got Paul here, and I don't know, are you doing all the reporting or?
No, but I'll explain sort of how it's going to go.
All right.
Anyway, so what's going to happen after this meeting, according to the notes that I've been garnishing and looking at from Brian, is that this is just basically an informational piece. Okay, to start off with, this is just information of the research and stuff that the committees have looked into. We've got 4 separate committees. After this, there needs to be consultation with the public. There needs to be at least 2 meetings and consultation before the next board meeting, where basically they can have a look at this report. No one's seen this except for the board at this stage. And so, so we need to sort of decipher that out. And I'm sure it's going to be a very robust discussion tonight. And so what I'm asking for is the guys who are on those different committees, which is the Family and Community Committee, the Staff Consideration, the Contract Language Committee, the Calendar Options themselves committee, and then also the research in the other districts, that you guys would actually answer the questions as people come up with it, come up with questions. So yeah, I guess that's where we're at the moment. As I said, the board has got all that information now. I think you guys want people to start asking questions.
I got a quick question for you. You said something, Paul, and I want to make sure I understand. You said that we needed 2 meetings prior to the next board meeting or prior to the board deciding this?
Prior to the next board meeting. Nothing we decided tonight.
Right, but what happens if we don't, or if we decide to have the surveys done later on? I guess my question is what kind of time frames are we looking at having to go to as opposed to?
Well, I think the calendar has to be decided by March. Is that right, Dan?
We would like to see it, I would like to see it in front of the board by March at the latest, yeah.
Yeah, so there's still a little bit of discussion to go on. I mean, what needs to happen is to have that community outreach and then maybe come back and talk again exactly what happened in those meetings as well. And then also, I guess we need to have this document out in the public.
I guess that's kind of where I was going with it, is that if we ship out a survey for quote-unquote the next board meeting, it may not give the community enough time to digest the information that was brought before us. And so I just wanted to make sure if we had some flexibility.
Oh,
okay.
There's plenty of flexibility there.
Okay.
It's just, we're just going through this process nice and slowly.
Okay.
We don't need to run.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, and I guess the easiest way to decipher this, I guess, would be to throw this on the website, right?
Yeah, it actually is.
It's on there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The report that you sent me, we posted it, I believe, Thursday on the school board site. And then what I'll do is make sure that the next superintendent update has got a link to it so that folks can find it easily to take a look at the document. Did you guys want to talk a little bit about what's in that report, or?
I guess we could do a really quick summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, if everyone wants to sort of, the different people, we've got people from all different groups here.
I guess as a show of hands, I'd appreciate those members that were part of that committee, that informational gathering committee, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hands.
I can summarize, but I'd rather have you guys are actually in the committee.
Yeah, that'd be great.
As a family committee, any of the family committee, yep, okay. There's someone here. The staff consideration and the contract language. Okay, Brandon. The calendar options.
That was us, yeah.
Okay.
Calendar options?
Yep.
And the research from other districts. That's the last one. Okay, go on, Nancy. Okay. Good, okay, so I think they could probably do quick summaries if you like. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you don't have to sort of quote it word for word, you know, there's a little bit there, but just sort of the guts of it, so when people go and look at the site, they kind of have a bit of a summary, I guess.
Okay, well, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I can jump into it.
No, I'm Vashti Teeters, I'm the rep for Radley Elementary. And we discussed, it started out kind of just talking about what is the problem right now? Like, what are we trying to solve? What are we maybe going to gain from doing this? To what are some of the days that we would need to still hold our meetings as a staff and what that looked like. So we went from just asking staff if they like, 2 Fridays, or if they just wanted like 2 half-day Fridays to a full Friday for a meeting. Those kind of questions came up. We looked at neighboring schools that gave us their feedback on what to do on Friday for our little ones, for example, that can't stay home. And the safety for them and what could we provide for enrichment. And there is a committee, and I don't know if it was in part of the packet to you, Dan, but we do have, I know there was a subcommittee that was coming up with enrichment ideas for Friday. We did look at hours. I think Mr. Prasad was looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, if you were looking like more at the hours for elementary compared to like what days we did it, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I believe that's all in there as well.
Okay. Yeah, so the family community thing I did get, the committee came back to me like only a couple of days ago before I'd already sent their stuff to you. So that's another little piece that kind of, and all that is looking at options for what would happen on a Friday, okay, for those students. Yeah, I guess, and they sort of put that all together. I'll have to put that together kind of, yeah, I'll have to give that to Dan, and you'll probably want to attach that somewhere. Sure. So that's one of the 4 committees that sort of, inside that main report, there's a little bit in there about it, but it's not as specific. And so these guys went a little bit more specific in terms of what they envisaged could happen on the Friday. So what about, you did the contract language stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and actually at MCL last year, there was a breakout session from the superintendent of Plentywood and Fairfield, and so they sent me their spreadsheets and basically their presentation. And so like our subcommittee's purpose was really to see what does it look like for a student day on a 5-day school week, what does it look like for a student day on a 4-day school week, same with staff, and then how does that really impact certified staff, classified staff. Classified staff would be our paraprofessionals, office staff, bus drivers, nutrition. And so really trying to compare like what does it look like in a day for instructional hours for a 4-day and a 5-day, and then really getting into the meat and potatoes of like how does that impact the collective bargaining agreement, because a lot of that language has to shift if you move from a 5-day to 4-day. So we got a lot of that information, that's what we provided.
Calendar, is that you, Martin? No? Who is it?
Do you want to touch that one or do you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
She kind of touched on some. We talked about kind of the PRI days for the teachers, if it was just 1 Friday a month. We also talked about your different breaks that land on Mondays, like Martin Luther King, Columbus Day, any of that stuff. And you would basically just keep your Friday off, so you're gonna have that 3-day the whole entire time rather than trying to fill in. Some schools will have the Monday and then fill in on a Friday, and we just took out the confusion of that to just have the Fridays. We kind of talked about how it might affect, I guess, high school with sporting events or even like FFA or any other type of events that travel. They could set up their traveling days for Fridays and be in the classroom the rest of the week and hopefully not miss as many school days if we go that direction. And then we also kind of set up some calendar options with start times kind of range in between 7:45 and 8, and then your end times between 3:45 and 4:15. I think the biggest hang up we were at is kind of spring break, not knowing if we should have a spring break or ex-nay the spring break and just have your Easter, a little small Easter break instead. So that kind of dictates whether or not you go later in the school district year or not. So we just kind of put some options together.
Yeah. Research. Do the research.
Sure, we just looked at what districts around had 4-day weeks. I think we determined that we would be among the bigger, certainly would be among the bigger, perhaps the biggest 4-day week district. There are lots and lots of districts, 4-day week districts. Kind of came up with the conclusion that lots go to 4-day weeks, nobody ever goes back. And I don't know that, it's a little bit confusing because as a whole, what we were talking about was like, what are the problems this is addressing? And this is not necessarily, what are the problems that other districts felt it was addressing? What problems would we want to be addressing? And those are sort of amorphous, but
Sure.
that basically, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was significant. Not really.
Okay. I'll just finish off here and before someone actually wants to say something. We talked about this morning at the admin meeting. I've been in 3 schools that have had 4-day school weeks, much smaller than this. There's a report that's just come out at OPI about the 4-day school week, which looks at the last 8 years or something, like 18, 15 years or something.
Yeah, it was lengthy.
There's also the rumor that I've been hearing about Helena High School looking to push the 4-day school week there at the AA school. So there's that as well. But then on top of that, you know, the schools that I've been at, it was mainly about 2 issues. Okay, the whole thing's about 2 issues, and this is something you've got to balance out, you know, when you're thinking about this. Number 1 is teacher retention. Okay, so remembering most of the school districts here at Class C, or most of the Class C schools have gone to 4 days, and they're struggling with getting teachers. Okay, so therefore, that was one of the tools was a 4-day school week to differentiate yourself from someone else. So, and a lot of the B schools have gone. In Class A, there's only Havre and then 2 or 3 schools or 2 schools in the east that have gone. So there's no real big school close to a town that's gone yet. So teacher retention was probably the number 1 issue in the schools that I was at. But the other 2 reasons had to do with mental health. And in a couple of schools I was at, basically, teachers were getting burnt out. Okay, they're getting burnt out, and so having that extra day off probably helped them. Some of your better kids are getting burnt out as well because they're doing like 10 different things. They're involved in about 10 different committees. And so that extra day helps them too. So those were the 2 major theories, okay, that I've worked at. So you have to work out in your minds, I guess, exactly, you know, why you're doing it. Why do you want to go to a 4-day school week? It's got to be about the kids, right? And it's got to be about, you know, and those are the reasons that come from those other places. Teacher retention, mental health.
Can I follow up on that, which is, the other thing as a group that we did was identify some of the real pitfalls that were obvious. The obvious one being, for many people in this district, the school is the safest part of their day. And that you are taking away 1/7 of that from their week. And so what sort of, and we talked about various ways that other places have addressed that and other ways that we would address that, whether it was through enrichment or whether it's through a Friday program. That was like one of the bigger hangups that we came across, I think. This is all and the OPI report paints it in a very different picture, but we didn't have that information through. So we didn't, I don't think, I never got the sense that we had any hard data on whether academically, or really even discussed what it would do academically necessarily, like just sort of the practicality of like how would it work if one were to consider it, how would it, or how does it work elsewhere? Okay.
We did talk about too, we might want to add, we did talk about it district-wide. And so I think that came out pretty early on, is that should it just be high school and junior high? And then it ended up being district-wide in order for, there was a lot of littles that go with their siblings to these sporting events or, so I think that's why Martin is saying, that we really look at what to do on that Friday for the littles. What if they, if they are leaving to go to the sporting events, or if they are leaving for not even East Town events, but like the club events on Friday, what about the others, students? So I will say that pretty unanimously in the very beginning, it's always been, we've looked at it K-12.
And I'd like to follow up on what Vashti said. None of this was a foregone conclusion. It was simply like, these are obvious questions that are kind of come up from the public. In order to even consider it, we need to have like consider it and accept input, we need to have some baseline idea of what we're talking about.
Right.
And what we were talking about was 4-day week for everybody. Just start there.
And that's when that survey kind of concluded that a little bit, there was that idea that parents were, also included as well. So that was shocking.
And I don't know if we necessarily overtly addressed what problem this was addressing. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to open it up for questions and comments from the public. I think that, and I don't know, I don't necessarily want to task you with this, Paul, but I think some of the conversations that we'll get will be some of the information that we'll need to continue to gather as we go for it, because there was a lot of confusion. I mean, unfortunately, there was a perception that at this meeting we were going to decide on going to a 4-day week, and that was not the intention or the case, and that has since been clarified and corrected. But that doesn't exclude the fact that there is some concerns and questions that I'm sure individuals have, both for and against that. So I'll leave it to whomever responsibility it is to gather the questions and then try to address those as we move forward with it. So at this point in time, are there any questions or comments from the board on the committee, or on the report from the committee?
Well, I don't know where to insert this, but I think earlier we heard that there's about 8,500 homes, housing units being considered for our district at this time, and that doesn't include all the stuff on Mountain View Meadows that hasn't been developed yet, which is considerable. And I don't know if it was when we built this building or when we built Prickly Pear. No, it wasn't Prickly Pear, but they did a study and they put 1.4 children in each of those units. So we're looking at an additional 12,000 students for this district. Now, I don't know how that plays into this, but I mean, we may have night school.
Right.
I mean, we don't have the buildings for that kind of, we got what, 1,600 or some.
Right now,
Yeah.
just under 2,000,
Okay.
but we are,
Yeah.
we'll be bumping up against
Well,
our
if you got another
capacity.
12,000 students,
Yeah.
I think we're bigger than the Helena district.
Yeah.
Considerably. I mean, like double or triple. And East Helena now becomes the primary population base for Lewis and Clark County. It's no longer Helena. I mean, Helena has 37,000 people in it. It's all of us around here that make up the remainder. And so I don't know how that fits in with it for 4-day school or whatever. I mean, this is beyond the scope of that somehow. And I'm not trying to terrify anybody, I just,
It's a legitimate concern, Mark. I mean, that's why we do strategic planning and try to do visionary things as far as on a monthly basis, just to determine precisely those types of things. And the decisions that we make now, what kind of impact that they would have on us.
and I'm thinking if it works better for small schools, how do you go back, or smaller districts, how do you turn that back? And maybe it's far enough out that it doesn't matter, but I think we certainly got to look at it now.
Well, we've never been shy about looking at things in long-term futures, so that's one of the positive things that this district has always done, so. Okay, Martin.
One thing that I found helpful, instead of like immediately, or not, instead of, in raising concerns was to be able to ask Paul and say, how did they do this, where you've been? Like, I found it very, very helpful to be able to do that. And I would suggest that anybody who does have questions tonight, like, we ask Paul to respond. He's not very shy, in my experience. And like, he's the only one I know that's been a part of an administration in a 4-day school week. So that was really helpful. And the other thing, I definitely had the sense when I started that this was a solution in search of a problem.
Right.
I have amended that from talking to staff, which is like, we don't have money. We're not gonna start suddenly paying people a bunch more. I mean, like, we got rid of teachers for, I mean, I just to be clear about it, this is something that could make us competitive in, and while it may come with lots of downsides, like, I don't know what that's worth, but it is an absolute draw. Like, when you mentioned it's people there, like, that would make me either take a pay cut or, you know, be willing to accept a position here when I wouldn't otherwise, was the sense I got.
That was the sense, that amongst like research, it was a sense amongst staff that they could have, sounds crazy, but to have like another job, a little fun job, they would say on the side, on a Friday, or do something, and they refer to it as kind of their fun job. So that would go back to that.
This isn't a fun job, Maggie. What are you talking about?
I'm just reporting what they would say. But that would go back to, you know, what, the finding of saying it was for the retention stuff. We did talk about it before. We also talked about sub shortage and finding, you know, high quality hires.
Okay, does the board have any other questions? Okay, I do.
Oh, then, one other question, which is there, the one thing that I read the OPI report, and like, a lot of them are counterintuitive, but there's no explanation. Like, how does it cost 8% more?
So on the cost one, because that was one of mine, and it specifically says in the report that class A and AA were removed from the data because large schools are more efficient to run. So that wasn't even part of the reporting that they put into that report. So that, in my opinion, doesn't even apply to us. So I thought that one was interesting.
It was hard though, like, I felt like they could have been a little more, it was great, it was certainly an indictment of the whole, the report is very unflattering. But like, there's an element of like, I don't know, maybe the schools that are more likely to be 4-day schools were worse to begin with, you know, there's a little bit.
Right, I mean.
Or have a propensity to have.
It's a chicken or an egg.
Yeah, for sure.
Discussion.
It's hard to find a control room.
Understood.
Okay. Members of the public, yep, I will, but first before we go there, show of hands who would like to speak on this item. Okay? Okay, same guidelines apply. You're welcome to address the board on this, questions, comments. Since it is an informational item, it's a little bit more relaxed as far as the conversation goes. I'm not going to be strict in that no questions can come out to individuals, but I would ask that you limit it to 3 minutes for your conversation. And so I'll invite you, when you do, please state your name.
Absolutely. Good morning, or good evening, board members. For the record, my name is Stuart St. Clair, and I reside at 1166 East Rigg Street. This is my first meeting, so my apologies if I make any procedural mistakes. Disclaimer, my opinions are my own and not of my employer. So, I'm a product of the East Helena school system, a property taxpayer within the district, and a proud parent of a 3rd grader at Radley Elementary. I have the utmost respect for the district, and I'm confident you will take my statement seriously. I'm before you to express concerns regarding any continued research or subsequent proposals for a 4-day school week. After reading the calendar committee report and linked University of Montana study, I'm inclined to express the following concerns. First and foremost is a potential decrease in the quality of education, i.e. negative impacts to student achievements. This concern is not just anecdotal, but is substantiated by findings in the UM study. I'd like to quote that. 4 years, 2008 through 2023, students in school districts utilizing the 4-day school week schedule demonstrated a lower percentage of proficiency in the statewide assessments than school districts utilizing the 5-day school week schedule, end quote. Number 2 is potential costs. It's already kind of come up in the meeting today. Again, not just anecdotal, it's substantiated and also mentioned in the report. I felt it was a great call out. The data can often contradict intuition. I encourage the board to weigh the UM study heavily, especially the conclusion which states, quote, "Data revealed the 4-day school week schedule has not been beneficial to most students in the state of Montana," end quote. Not only did the study find the 4-day week unsuccessful, but the author recommended revising the very state statute that currently allows implementing a 4-day week. An incredibly strong stance to take on the matter. With these concerns in mind, I respectfully ask you to consider how a 4-day week provides educational benefit. To be candid, I'm struggling to find the correlation, especially when the empirical data indicates a significant detriment to the students. I humbly ask you to direct the calendar committee to maintain status quo with the current calendaring approach and reconsider further direction to research this topic. If you feel more research is necessary, perhaps task the committee with drafting a business case, i.e. a justification, explicitly explaining the quantifiable gains the district could experience from a 4-day week. At a minimum, all stakeholders need to see this information upfront in a digestible format. Additionally, I would respectfully ask you to also acknowledge the risks, i.e. the findings in the UM study. The data within the study, derived from state testing and TFS reports, unequivocally demonstrates that the risks are high. At the end of the day, you're exploring major adjustments to the format of students' education, excuse me, and the stakes couldn't be higher. I'd like to note that I do have additional questions that may be more targeted towards the specific subcommittees, and when I first prepared this, it was with the formal traditional approach of just speaking to the board. So I'll wrap that up, and if there's time for later, I'd love to ask some inquisitive there. So I thank you for your time, consideration, and most importantly, your efforts to provide the very best for the students, teachers, and administration of East Helena Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. As far as those questions go,
yes.
Feel free to forward those via email to Dan Rispens, and Dan will make sure that the committee gets those and go through those.
Will do.
Okay, next. Eric, Julie.
I'm Eric Curtis, 2461 Haystack. Just some rhetorical questions here. I know we have committees working on this, kind of new to me. I don't know how much research has gone into this. Kind of glad we're somewhat at the early stages, but some more questions just to be thinking of. Somebody had said, not sure if we're looking for a problem or a solution here. I don't know either. I don't know what. One of the things, a lot of the schools that have gone to the 4 days sounds like they are smaller schools without options. Here at East Helena, students have options. If they don't want to come here, they can go elsewhere. If they want to come here, they can. Other schools, Class B, Cs, if they want to drive a long distance, they have those options, but in reality. One of the things I thought in the past for a 4-day argument was MOA with a shortage of referees and officials, trying to coordinate those travel days. And something that I'm hearing is we want to have Fridays off so we can have events on Fridays and students out of school. Has anyone talked to MOA? Can they support that? Can they provide us officials on Fridays with a bulk of events on Fridays? And then some of our competitions are different MOA pools, so it's not just our local Helena pool here.
I can answer your question real quick there.
Okay.
As it turns to the referees. That was the original, thinking behind the schools I've been in, that, we can do all the sport on the weekend and we don't have to have sport during the week. That's not the reality. The reality is that, we don't have enough referees. And so no matter what, you're still playing sport on Tuesdays and Mondays.
Okay. So it's not a solution?
Not in terms of that, no.
Another consideration is local businesses. A lot of our students, including my own children going to school at East Helena, had jobs during the week. With a 4-day week or school week, getting up earlier in the morning, staying in school later in the day means less availability to work. What's the Chamber of Commerce? What do the local businesses think of this? Has anyone run it past them? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of kids available on Fridays. Can the community support it? The businesses support that? We, as a school, should be looking out. We are part of the community and play our role there. It was mentioned that part of a 4-day is opportunity for teachers. Maybe it's attractive. Well, it's also going to be attractive to some students. It's going to be a deterrent for other students. So what's it going to do to the enrollment? If we see a flood of students that want to have Fridays off and they come here, how can we handle that? They might move in district as well, where we don't have much option out around that. Just some questions to be thinking of. I don't know what's, you know, if there's a problem or solution or what the answer is, but just some things to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your comments. Others? Yeah, please.
Vince Bray, my wife Rachel Bray, and we're at 2655 Colt Drive. I've got a bunch of the same thing, rhetorical questions kind of thing. Just make sure everybody's thinking about it, and we can forward these in an email. I guess my first question would be, are we having troubles finding teachers and that kind of stuff, or is that a major concern? Because if that's a problem we're trying to solve, then I understand it, but if we're not trying to solve that problem, seems like it might be a moot point. And then it talks about, so one of my big questions, I'm military, and I know for a fact when you don't use your budget, you lose it. And so one of the things that I see happening here is what happens to the food budget on Fridays, what happens to the staffing budget on Fridays, what happens to, and how does that, because you can't serve an extra meal on Tuesday through Thursday just to try to use your budget. So does that stuff go away? Do we lose budget in certain areas? Does it, is it going to help us in any way? Capacity of kids would be a big one, which has been brought up by two people, and just kind of to tap on it again. 12,000 kids possibly, and then also other kids wanting Fridays off. I think that's kind of a tough thing for people to kind of manage as we move forward. The potential of 7 to 8 years from now having 14 to 15,000 kids in this school district. Like that seems like enough in and of itself, which means that you're going to be such a big school. Is that going to still be an issue? Is the 410s thing even going to be are we going to be so big that it's no longer efficient? And then somebody said, would teachers be able to take a pay cut? My question there is, would the union allow teachers to say, yes, I'll take a pay cut to work for 4 days? Like, I can't imagine the union's going to just allow teachers to start saying, oh, heck yeah, I'll work for less money. That's a tricky one. So there's going to be collective bargaining agreements that are going to have to be gone through. And these ones come from Heather Lake, who also many of you know, who couldn't be here tonight, but she's asked me to ask these. So early outs, would we still be doing early outs on Mondays if we were doing a Monday through Thursday, or would it just be reserved to Fridays? What are the other schools who have been doing the 4-day weeks, and then do they have positive and negative feedback on kind of how it's affecting students, how it's affecting teachers, that kind of stuff? And then the prep days. So is it academics purely Monday through Thursday, and then prep days are kept to just Fridays? And then the last one that she has on here is what are the, or excuse me, we already did that one, excuse me. Why not more of a year-round schedule? Why not, if you're going to do that, why not look at doing a shorter summer break, something along those lines? And then maybe do more breaks during the week, during the school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your questions.
Good comments, thank you.
Yeah, please.
So I kind of have a laundry list of questions. I may just forward them, so no answers now. I guess should I just read them off real quick?
Please.
My first, I'm Danny Mitchell, and I'm at 4272 Hines Road. My first question would be, what was the catalyst for this discussion? I know that when I got the short survey, I do sub in the schools, so I kind of have a unique perspective of being a parent in the community and being in the schools at the same time. And when I was subbing, especially long-term jobs, I realized that we were missing a lot of Fridays. And so initially I was like, yes, 4-day weeks sound great. But if we cannot keep the games to Friday, Saturday, then to me, we're missing even more. My next question would be, would we keep the block schedule in the middle school and the high school? Because then you're going even more days between seeing kids, if they have a class on Thursday or whatnot, maybe potentially miss Monday again. You're going nearly a week. You're going nearly a week already sometimes. if they miss school. So if we keep that block schedule, I think that's even longer between seeing these kids for some of these classes, which I will say I'm not a fan of that. I'm wondering how much longer the school day would be for these kids. What time would they be there in the morning? These little guys, do they want to be at school that long? I don't think my little guy could handle it. I don't know about that. Also, we are taking these kids, I know that we say that schools are a safe place for these kids, and it is. However, I would prefer my kids not to be in the schools as much, right? Like, I don't want them gone longer during the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then in the daycare on Friday, right? The kids are out of their homes even longer. And that's a concern to me, that we are taking kids away from their homes. Potential pay cuts, again, with, bus drivers, subs, don't work on Friday then, right? Those are pay cuts for some of those people who do those day-to-day jobs. I know I have a daughter who starts ballet class at 3:30 because Helena gets out at Monday at 2:30. So they start ballet class at 3:30. I'm already picking her up at 3 o'clock from middle school to go take her. So what about those after school activities that start at 4 o'clock? If we're not getting out until 4, but the rest of the community has soccer starting that early or whatnot, right? Again, we talked about the jobs. I have high schoolers who have jobs who they say, well, we don't have enough hours for you. So their hours are already cut just because they're in school, but this would make it even worse. Let's see. I have heard that with the 4-day week, attendance rate on Mondays actually decreases. I don't know if that's true or not, but can you imagine then a lot of kids are kind of taking a 4-day weekend instead of a 3-day now? Which then again, if we still do the block, then that's just excessive time away from classes. Calendar coordinating with Helena Public Schools. We already have that issue. We already have families who are bridging, teachers who are bridging both. This would make it even more of a nightmare for that. I noticed that we are not even on the same spring break schedule this year, which I know for some families is a problem. So things like that, how are we working with Helena School District? Because all these small, tiny schools, are they connected? Are they a bedroom community to a bigger community? I don't know, but we are, right? I know we kind of discussed maybe just doing the high school, but then would that kind of push our middle school into doing it as well because we share teachers, share a block schedule, that kind of thing? That's all I have for now. I'll leave it on, but I may come up with it.
Thanks, Dan. Well, thank you, appreciate it, and go ahead and submit those questions via email today. Are there any others? I want to say, express my appreciation. Oh, no,
Sorry.
not you.
Mary Smith report.
Full disclosure, Mary and I work with each other, so she's used to me, kinda.
I think my general comment is, it sounds like it's a good tool for some schools that are having issues. I'm curious why, why? If it's just because, something to look into, everyone else is doing it, or if there are issues that the school is facing that this could be a tool for.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And just so that everyone knows, this was brought, like Dan had said originally, this was brought up to the board about a year ago, maybe a little bit less, that there was a significant element of staff, community members, and parents that had expressed interest in us looking into it. It wasn't a case that they were demanding it. It wasn't a case that they thought that we should do that. They just said, yeah, this is something that we're seeing. What is your consideration of it? And I can tell you that East Helena Public Schools and the school board have never been afraid of looking at information and looking at all sides of things. Expanding from a K-8 school district to a K-12 school district was a prime example. There were a lot of people that didn't think that was a good idea. There were several people that thought it was. The board, through a deliberative process, decided that they were going to review that information, see whether or not it was in the best interest, and we made that decision, and you saw what we ended up with now. It's not to say that this is a foregone conclusion. the board and the administration will look at all of the items, especially the questions that you guys have proposed, and we will take all of that under advisement, gain some additional information, and move forward with this. But just to ease everybody's mind is that this is not something that the board has already decided upon. This is just the initial steps in trying to gather the information and for us to educate ourselves on what exactly the ramifications of some of these decisions might be. So, but thank you, really appreciate everybody's comments, questions. That will be helpful as we move forward with this, and it will help us formulate some additional questions for ourselves.
Can you tell people like what will happen now? Or tell me.
Well, I'm not 100% sure. If I was in control, and if I was in a position to recommend, which I am, I would recommend that we not change anything for at least a year, just in light of the study from U of M and the recommendations in that study. For instance, if the legislature were to read a study out of Missoula and say, oh, we've got to do what these professors are telling us to do and change the law and go back to 180 days the following year, and we go through all the work to renegotiate MOUs and negotiated agreements to adjust to a 4-day week and then get told we have to go back to a 5-day week, that would seem like a huge...
It's not a study out of Bozeman.
I know, right, that's what I'm getting at.
And what is that supposed to be?
But, you know, the fact that there's conversation at the policy level in state government on this topic would cause me to tap the brakes on anything that we were thinking about doing until the dust settles on that conversation. The next part is the survey that the calendar committee did last year specifically asked if parents would be interested in the committee researching, or if they'd be interested in learning more about a 4-day week. It didn't say, are you interested in going to a 4-day week? And so that's what the committee set out to do, was let's find out more about this 4-day week thing. So there's not a recommendation on the table right now to say, let's jump in with both feet and go 4 days next week, or next year. But there was surprisingly more interest in the community among parents that were interested in it, that it really shocked and surprised the committee. It surprised me because in my mind I imagine that a huge percentage of our parents either work for the state or work for Blue Cross or possibly work at the hospital and don't have a tremendous amount of flexibility in their work schedules to say, if your kids have Friday off, to just start taking Fridays off so you can have family time. And if you can't, then as Danny's pointing out, that Friday at daycare is, first of all, it could be an outstanding daycare. I'm sure it's a great situation, but it's still not the same as being in the classroom with your teacher and your friends. And so that's kind of my take on it. I'm not ready to do anything rash. I talked with Scott briefly about it last week, that maybe this is something that a board committee needs to take up and discuss and study. And I think we can discuss as a board if we want to do anything with it, and if we do, what those next steps ought to look like.
Can I add something for the, I don't want to say crowd, but public?
Yeah.
All of your guys' concerns, I would say, were huge concerns on the committee as well. I mean, we didn't just rationally put up this proposal, and Martin and I came late in the game. I mean, they had done a ton of work and they had researched a ton with all of your guys' concerns behind all of that. So I give them huge props for the work. I mean, they have the care and the concern there too. And like Dan said, it's just a working committee to kind of gather the information. Nobody has specifically said yes or no. I think all of us in the room, I don't know if we could point out and be like, oh, this person's for it and this person's against it. Just so you guys are aware, there was a lot of work and discussion put into this not policy, but not even recommendation, whatever it is before us.
Yeah, just research.
Information research. So.
There is no proposal, correct?
Not right now.
Well, I for one appreciate the work. I didn't know kind of all what it entailed. I'm glad that I read through the report. It was very informative for me. I do need to read the one that came out from OPI. I have a feeling that this is the kind of information that I as a board member need to make a good sound decision. So I appreciate that to the committees. Your work has not gone unnoticed. So if this ever does come before, this is the foundational work for making a good, solid, sound decision, whatever that decision may be. So I appreciate everyone's comments as well. I would hope that those that spoke today would also be maybe willing to work as a community, as you have some meetings or something. I would have ventured to guess that you would show up and be able to work through that as well. Thank you for the questions. That's something that keeps us honest on the board as well as the administration. So thank you.
So, saying that, we can move on to our next item under the agenda. And for those individuals that do not wish to stay, if this was the only item that they wanted to discuss, you're more than welcome to be excused. You don't have to stick around, but you're...
Not your guts, you have to stick.
Yeah, he's just too big to sneak under that.
Okay, the next item under our agenda is consideration of our variance request for the 227 Academy.
Yeah, so this was linked on the website as a separate document. It came in after the supporting docs were posted. So if you didn't get a chance to look at the document itself, what it is we're asking the board to approve a request for a variance to standards for the librarian standard in the accreditation rules for the 227 academies. The reason for that is if those students in the 227 Academy at the middle school and the high school were actually just enrolled at EVMS or East Helena High School, we would totally be in compliance with the librarian standards with that entire enrollment and the librarian FTE that we have in those buildings. Because it's a separate school, there's a new standard that applies to it, even though it's the same number of students in the same building being served by the same person. And that number that applies to it is 0.001 FTE at each school because the enrollments are so low. And so it's really kind of a ridiculous thing, but it's the way that Chapter 55 accreditation standards sort out librarians is they're assigned as either a 0.5, like a half-time, or a full-time, or a 0.001, and those are your options for what you're supposed to assign. This variance, our understanding is, first of all, it's due today, so we already submitted it. If the board were to reject it, we would just rescind it and ask for it back from OPI. If the board approves it tonight, we'll submit a revised signed copy tomorrow along with the unofficial minutes from the board meeting, and then when the board approves the final minutes in November, we have to submit the final minutes, and then the whole thing goes to the Board of Public Ed, and their meeting is in Bozeman later in November, and Lindsay and I are planning to appear on behalf of the district at that meeting to answer any questions they may have about our variance request. What it does is it keeps us in accreditation for the next 2 years and gives us some time to figure out how we're going to comply with that librarian requirement and how things are going to unfold with enrollment in the 227 Academy. So that's the short version of it. It's about 6 or 7 pages long, and I asked you to talk about it tonight, and then I said everything. So do
I
you
think you mastered it.
All right. Sorry.
No, you're good.
If a librarian would happen to drive by said school once a week, and we could give them $10 for doing that, would that, I mean, this is so ridiculous.
I know.
I wondered if we could get you a hat. Like a big hat, and then is a librarian.
It really is kind of a bean counting situation.
Yeah.
And like I said, as we grow and develop this charter school, we will have to look at other options for this staffing, but this gets us under the wire and to a place where we can consider how we might want to approach that and deal with it in the future.
And the OPI understands exactly what you're saying
Yeah,
in
they
this
directed
particular
us to
case,
do this.
and they're the ones that recommended
Yeah,
this.
yeah, thank
So
you for-
when we go through this, if the board does approve it, they'll stamp our application without any questions.
Well, I make a motion
You do so.
to, whatever we're doing here.
You gotta be a little bit more careful than that, Mark.
Yeah,
I would entertain a motion to approve the variance standards
yeah,
request.
variance standards for the librarian at .002.
Yeah, you're gonna go right to the jail if we start adding too many things on it.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance standards request.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome. Any questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Saying none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Next item is consideration of strategic planning language.
Okay, this is a culmination of a conversation that occurred during negotiations between the Teachers Association and the group representing the trustees in the contract negotiations last spring. The topic was another element of Chapter 55 standards relating to teacher student load. And the consensus with the negotiating teams last spring was that probably, first of all, immediately complying with what some people interpret in those standards as the intended teacher load would be fiscally unattainable for us to accomplish right away, and that a better place for the district to make a commitment to try to reduce those student loads for teachers in grades 6 through 12 would be through our goals in the strategic plan as a little bit more of a longer range horizon for how we can achieve and accomplish those things. So the ad hoc committee of strategic planning for the school board met, and some representatives from the Teachers Association came and offered some input and participated in what I thought was a great conversation to come up with the adjusted language for the strategic plan. And so I only included that one page of the plan in this supporting docs that we made adjustments to. That page is in your supporting docs. I believe we linked the entire strategic plan on the website as part of your board package if you wanted to look at the entire thing. But this is where the group felt that this is the language that we felt fit the best and where we felt it would be the best place to put it in the strategic plan. And it's in front of you tonight for your consideration and approval.
So before the board, we have that information, and the members of that committee, that ad hoc committee, were myself, Tristan, and Marcia. Of course, Marcia was not here tonight, but Tristan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to.
Are we gonna keep the wording the same on that sentence?
Yeah, I never came up with anything better.
I had this one, but I don't know if you can change it now.
Well, we can if we
That's the
agree to
square
it.
area. Just
We
for that
will
beginning
search for
sentence.
opportunities and
Processes.
to be more efficient versus we will search for efficiency, opportunities, and processes.
I don't know if that changes the meaning.
Yeah, it makes sense now.
That's good.
If you can read my writing.
We will search for
Well, it wouldn't make sense the other way. That would be a great job.
You're on read tonight, aren't you?
processes to be more efficient, yeah.
So we will search for.
We will search for opportunities and processes to be more efficient. We will identify areas that show staffing level deficiencies and work to proactively prioritize the recruitment and hiring of those positions. That's item 4. Thanks, Tristan.
Yeah.
I'll just add that there was a great discussion. I think we would agree that we had a great discussion as far as that goes. We bounced some wording around, did some wordsmithing, or to clarify it, placed it in the location that seemed like it was the most appropriate. And so I think it was a valuable effort on that, on everyone's part. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the additional language in our strategic plan.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, a motion from Stacy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Tyrell. Questions or comments from the board? Question? Nope. No. I'm looking at Mark. He's the one that's antagonizing. No, he's the one antagonizing. Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll get that incorporated in the strategic plan, and we will update it. The administration will have their additional marching orders.
Yep.
Okay, next item on the agenda is consideration of resolution 238 for the disposal of some obsolete and unusable equipment.
Yeah, so this resolution just opens the door for us to either sell or junk 2 pickups that are parked behind Radley School that haven't moved in about a year and a half. The Dodge Ram has a transmission that doesn't work, and the Chevy truck is just really old and worn out. That was a state surplus vehicle 20 plus years ago when the district bought it. And then 2 old riding lawnmowers that they've been there for at least 3 or 4 years and haven't moved. And it's just starting to become an eyesore and starting to look a little bit like a junkyard back there, so we'd like to clean it up.
So you were never a used car salesman?
No, I'm not doing a good job selling
Yeah,
them.
not very well.
Whoever buys them needs to bring a trailer or a truck and a chain, because they're not driving them out.
And flashing lights.
Okay, this time I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 238 for solicitation of the disposal for the potential.
Can you sell them in the auto auction and get a little something out of them?
What we have to do is put them out for bid, and then if we get any bids, we'll open them at the next board meeting.
Can't throw them in the Copart?
And if there's no bids, one thing we could do is put them at Copart, or we could just put them on Craigslist for a few $100 and see if somebody will come get them. We actually, I will be very forthright with you, we do have had a couple custodians that were interested in the trucks. One guy's willing to put a transmission in that truck to try and get it fired up again. It's got a brand new set of tires on it, so.
That's like $800 right there.
Right, I know, it's worth something. They're a little weather checked now, but they've been sitting there for a while.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 238.
Okay, we have a motion, about a second.
I'll second.
Second from Stacy. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Thanks. We'll get that off in the newspapers and we'll see if we get any bids. Next item on our agenda is the opening of a new student activity account for the Pride and Allies Club.
All right, this group has been around for a while, but they decided to do some fundraising last spring and worked concessions and made a couple $100 for their group, and now we don't have a place to deposit it, so they are in need of an activity account.
Okay. Like all student accounts, that has to be approved by the board in order to get those open up. So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to approve the student activity account for the Pride and Allies Club.
I'd make a motion to approve the student activity account for the Pride and Allies Club.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mark. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. And now we have got a travel club request
Yeah.
For out-of-state travel?
Out-of-state travel, actually out of the country travel. This is the East Helena High School Travel Club. Rebecca Bergman is their sponsor, their new sponsor.
Yeah.
And she's here tonight to talk to you a little bit about their request and their plans.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Bergman. I'm one of the art teachers at the high school. Last year, Miss Mail, our Spanish and English teacher, had given me her travel club because she had too big of a workload to run it anymore, and I've always kind of been interested in student travel. The company that we had been organizing with was EF Education First. They're a pretty large and established company that has been running for about 50 years. And a group of students and I started working on fundraising for a trip to Europe that's going to go to London, Paris, Florence, and Rome. But we found out recently that it was never approved when it got set up. I think that there was just some hoops that were missed. So I wanted to ask for support and the ability to continue using school spaces and as well to get to fundraise through the school. I brought documents, the general terms and conditions for students who sign up, what they're signing up for. EF also does have their own insurance plan. They have a baseline one that covers all of like the basic travel stuff like flights, rooms, medical things, all of that, but they also have options that students can pay for additional coverage. And then I also brought the itinerary. It's a very, like the name implies, Education First. It's an educational travel program where students can even get college credit if they choose to take a 16-week course. And with complying school districts, they can offer half the high school credit. So it's all focused around learning and seeing a bunch. So yeah, I have a group of 11 right now. We're very excited and would really love to continue to do the trip through the school if you guys are willing to consider it. I had 2 lined up to come with me tonight, but one got called to work and one got sick, so they couldn't make it, but they did want to be here. I didn't think to to print enough for everyone, but I do have these, whoever would like them. Yeah.
When might any of this happen aspirationally?
June, this coming June, so June 2025 is when the trip is planned.
And is your funding on track? Like, you think it'll work?
Yeah, the students are all on payment plans, so they and their families pay roughly like $200 a month. A lot of them have jobs they've been working towards. This is my first club and my first trip, so fundraising we've been learning how to do. We had a pretty successful one last year where we raffled off a fly fishing trip. We tried a garage sale, which was less successful, but we're kind of trying fundraising here and there. But yeah.
So these are already students that have parent permission to go, and are planning to go.
Yeah.
And then how many chaperones, or what do you do for adults on the trip, or are there adults, or does that group sponsor some sort of?
Yeah, no, those are great questions. So yeah, all the parents are in on it. We had like a whole parent meeting and I met every parent before I allowed them to sign up because I didn't want to take them across the country without their parents being on board. And then as for chaperones, right now we have 11. If I have one more student sign up, there's the option for me to have one chaperone come with. Parents can attend. They are signing up for a student trip though, so they'd still have to follow all the rules and expectations from EF as like student travelers would. As of now, I don't have any parents that are signed up.
So it's just you and 11 high schoolers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brave family.
I would say EF Tours is probably one of the top of the line student travel groups to book with. I think that gives me a lot more peace of mind knowing that, especially with the itinerary, all the moving around that they're gonna have to do, this is gonna be a very, you're not gonna get a lot of sleep kind of trip. And the other groups that we've had that have used tour companies, and there are other ones besides EF, the nice part about it is everything's pretty much laid out for you. It's not like you're looking for taxis or trying to figure out how to get to your hotel or that kind of stuff. It's all orchestrated, set up and structured so that there aren't surprises. And they
11
have,
people ride in one van, not
Yeah.
only 4 people can fit in a taxi.
Yeah, and they have staff throughout the world that can assist if there are issues that come up, so.
Yeah, and, oh, yes.
Yeah, I just, what responsibility or authority does the school have? I mean, currently this company or whatever wants the okay from the school board to okay the trip, and I'm just wondering what the connection is, or what are we voting?
So our policy requires approval from the board anytime we travel outside the state boundaries with students. And the reason is because we have a responsibility to our students no matter where they're at, if they're involved in a school activity, and the students have a responsibility to adhere to student handbook requirements, whether it's June in Paris or December at East Helena. So, so it's still very much a school activity.
Okay. The club is sanctioned by the school.
Yeah.
In other words,
Yeah.
so, okay, that's what I wanted
Yeah,
to
no, you're
know,
right.
what the connection.
Yeah.
Because they're doing their own money, they're doing, I mean.
Right.
And it would be state law, so if they decided they were gonna go to Cody, Wyoming, we would have to approve it.
Yeah.
So it's.
It'd be a little less impressive than Paris.
Oh, Cody's pretty fun.
I like Cody.
You could go to Orlando.
There you go.
So I heard London, Paris, Rome, and what was the fourth? Florence?
Florence.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to approve the travel request for the East Helena High School Travel Club.
I make a motion to approve the travel request for the East Helena High School Travel Club.
Motion to have a second.
I'll second.
I think I heard Tyrell first.
You did.
I don't care, somebody help me. Okay, any questions or comments from the board?
I would just like to thank you, because willingness to embark on this sort of thing with a bunch of students and to just undertake it is next to godliness in my eyes. Good for you, and good for all of the kids, students, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Go forward. Next time, do it a different time.
Do we get a report?
Yeah, how about a report back after you guys get back?
Oh, of course.
The board will want to see some pictures.
We'll have lots.
Okay, moving on, we have got another request, this time travel request from the East Helena High School Choir.
All right, Ms. Shoppy, our high school choir director, is here with some students, and they're going to talk with us about their plans for out-of-state travel. There you go.
She's like an old pro, see, like this how, yeah. She goes to Seattle like it's water, like no big deal.
Well, I learned a lot in Seattle.
But
let's
first,
say that.
a song.
A song.
Is this Vancouver, Washington?
That's tomorrow.
Just in case you want.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I guess I'll start off. I'm a junior in high school. My name is Ashton Berg. I'm in 2 choir classes. I'm in Vigilante Voices and in Vigilante Choir, meaning I get to go on the trip, of course. And this is?
I'm Zachary Stewart. I am a senior. I am in Vigilante Voices. Would you count the mentoring? Probably not? Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's me.
And actually, Zach is headed to Allstate
Oh, yeah.
on Wednesday, so he's participating in
all-state choir on Wednesday, which is pretty cool.
Definitely ready.
Yes. Go ahead, did you?
We're asking for permission for the Vigilante Choirs to travel to Vancouver, Washington, just for a choir festival. This trip would be from May 21st to the 25th, or from the 22nd to the 26th. That Monday is a Memorial Day.
It's not my turn now, okay. Oh, you leave me with like 6 words. The cost will be about $1,450 per person.
So I use a company called World Stride Music. They're who I used when we went to Seattle. And like Dan said, it's wonderful that so much is just planned out for us. It's pretty cool. Our Vigilante buses were able to take us to Seattle last year. And Steve was our bus driver, and that man parallel parked the bus in downtown Seattle, which was the highlight of the entire trip to those beginning drivers, which was pretty incredible in their little minds, you know. So I just wanted to show you a print off of what I see from the company. We talked through every possible thing that we could do for the trip. This trip would be a little bit more upscale than the trip we went to in Seattle, but still we had an incredible time where we brought home a trophy from the festival, which was super exciting for us last year. And we're hoping to do that again for this trip also. So you can see on here on the back side, I guess I don't know which side is which, but it talks about what the fees go towards. When you have a group of this size, they don't like to give us continental breakfast, so we have to pay for our breakfasts every day. Something I learned on the last trip we took is kids were on their own for their lunch and they had their money. Well, then they spent it all on sweatshirts. Actually, it was Build-A-Bear they spent it on. So then it came to mealtime and they didn't have food money. And so the company and I were looking at some of that, and that's what this fee is, and this card, JASB, whatever that is, where I can pre-program money into their card and it puts it out to them right at the time that they would need it. So you get $20 for lunch. If you're hungry, go eat. If not, go to Build-A-Bear and spend your $20. We had many Build-A-Bears on the bus. And then the other thing I learned on the trip was that restaurants don't like to seat groups that are large, and we couldn't find places to eat. I thought, I can do this myself. I don't need a travel company to organize a restaurant for us. Well, it turns out it would be way easier if they organized it for me because they can do these back rooms and stuff. It was really hard for us to find places to eat, so we ate at the mall like every meal. So that's something on there you can see in there. This is, if we did everything that the trip is offering, this is the price it would cost, and you can see the breakdown. The excursions are, one of them is like a bridge that's way up in the air. It looks a little terrifying, like this little bridge that's just a wooden bridge and everything. That's one of the excursions they have. And this place called Tower something or other, which is also a really high in the air thing. So we'll see how kids do with that. The front side has the hotel breakdown and we're still in the middle of looking at transportation because it costs a lot of money to leave Montana, planes and all of that. So we're still looking at costs for all of that and just trying to figure out all of our options for that. So if you have questions about our endeavors for Vancouver.
Vancouver, Washington is what I heard.
Washington, not Canada.
And not
Yes.
Canada.
Yes, I've gotten that question a lot.
Okay.
It's across the river from Oregon.
Yeah.
Yes. It's about a 10-hour drive, I think I've seen.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Stay on this side. How will you raise your money?
Well, actually, we've started a poinsettia fundraiser, so if anybody wants poinsettias, we have those. The kids have been fundraising for the last year. Just knowing that we would travel again, we didn't have a specific place in mind or anything, just knowing we would travel. We've done some flagging for the motocross races, which some of the kids have really enjoyed. That's something we've done for the past 2 years. We're selling chocolate, poinsettias, we do concessions as much as we can. We put on a carnival in the spring, in May we put on a carnival. We're planning to see if we can do our spaghetti feed again, which I think we raised close to $3,000 last time we did a spaghetti feed. So those are some fundraisers we're putting towards it. And then whatever money we don't raise, the kids will just be on their own for. They'll have to raise the rest of that money themselves. And if they don't participate in the fundraisers, they don't get the fundraiser money. I just put the money that they fundraise towards their accounts.
Any other questions? Okay, at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to approve the travel request for the East Helena High School Choir to attend the trip to Vancouver.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion by Trista, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mark Deal. Any questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments for the public? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, enjoy.
Pictures.
You guys want to give us a demo of your all-state singing?
We don't have any songs picked.
We can find one for you.
Maybe when we get closer, we can sing a song before we go. How's that?
All right, that'd be great.
Okay.
That would be good. Thanks for shopping.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda is our consideration of a home support services contract with Intermountain Children's Home.
Okay, as I stated in the packet, this is a program similar to the agreement that we went into with Aware on last spring. And the long story short, what our partners in the mental health field have found under the CSCT program with Medicaid reimbursement is that the Medicaid reimbursement rate only provides about 67-ish% of what they need to operate the program. This is a different program under Medicaid and Medicaid reimbursement called Home Support Services. It's provided in the school setting with the same staffing ratios as CSCT and the same type of staff, a therapist and a mental health specialist who serve a caseload of between 8 and 14 students in school. But it does come with a significantly higher reimbursement rate through Medicaid. And one neat part about this component is the home part of it. So it's home support services, and the approach is more of a wraparound system of care. So rather than just focusing on the student in the school, the therapist and the mental health specialist are required to work with the family, visit the home, offer support in that environment as well. So this agreement is with Intermountain Children's Home. We've worked with Intermountain Children's Home for as long as I've worked in the school district on mental health needs and supports. They've got new leadership up at ICH. Jamie Pelagi, who's a parent in the district, is their new CEO. They've been through some rough straits and difficult financial times, and I think Jamie's working really hard to right the ship up there. She's personally invested in Intermountain Children's Home. And by personally invested, I don't mean financially. I mean her family has benefited from the work that they do up there, and she wants to make sure it's a success. So she's very driven. She's very committed to East Helena, and she approached me about this agreement, which will get a mental health team functioning. First target is Radley Elementary. Is where we're going to start with this, and I'm hoping that we're able to expand this and expand our mental health supports into the other schools, because right now we only have Prickly Pear, and this will be Radley that'll get added, and eventually we want to get that into the other schools. We do have an outpatient therapist who sees a handful of students at Radley and EVMS right now as well. So that's the business.
Okay. This time I would entertain a motion to approve the home support services contract with Intermountain Children's Home.
So moved.
I have a motion from Tyrell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Stacy. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, now we'll go on to our first reading of policies, 2309, 2314, and 3630. We'll handle these on an individual basis. I think is the best way of taking care of it.
I think so too, because this first one's pretty long. So this is the results of the policy committee meeting, which happened about 3 weeks ago in September. The policy committee got together. We had some representatives from our library media specialists there, as well as some curriculum specialists. I believe we had 1 or 2 instructional coaches there. And again, I felt like we had some great conversation around these particular policies. This first one, 2309, relates overall to the library program and selection of materials. And I guess I'm not going to talk too deeply about it. We made some adjustments, and you can see those changes in the text there, and I was just wanting to lean a little bit on the committee to see if anybody had any comments specifically about 2309.
Yeah, so I think for these policies, in general, there was like the status quo, there was the basic, very limited language, and then there was the more kind of dictated / procedural type policy that had a lot more language and guidance in it. Based on our conversation in the working session at the committee, the more robust policy was the one that was selected as what was desired from staff. So going through that, we looked at some language. We had some kind of comical discussions about what is comprehensive. You know, some of those defined but undefined terminology that everybody can argue over what it is or isn't. So some of that, we did a little cleanup there on it. So this is a customized version for our school district, but it does follow the, I guess, the more robust version of it. We got a lot of really good feedback from librarians and the instructional coaches that this would be beneficial for especially dealing with any kind of, as you'll see in the later policy, any kind of challenges or to library material.
In the first one, when you say robust, my recollection is that basically we didn't elaborate on a whole bunch of things that were sort of within the realm of being a librarian.
Yep.
And we just...
Yeah, just put it in policy instead of being like a short, hey, we're gonna provide library materials, kind of like the basic one, and then we have the one that, this is how we're gonna provide it, the way we're gonna provide it, and that's what we have in front of us, so.
But there are a number of things that are struck out that were like, yes, that is included in reviewing library material.
Yep. Yeah, so one of the strikeouts was like identifying what kind of material, like audiobooks, libraries, DVDs, is, come on, let's just material. Let's just leave it at that. We don't need to get too crazy on it because those things always change. We had discussion about, like I said, the comprehensive was one that was struck out. There was language added, I think, I on a couple of pages, line 31, where we balanced the need and demand. So there was a lot of discussion about if you have something that only works on, like this is an analogy, but if you had something that only works on an iPhone, you have to get the thing that works on the Android too. You know, like, because that's a cost. I mean, that's a very real cost. So if you had to get just the one, like you could afford one, but you couldn't afford two, you know, is it better to have just the one and have some students be able to access it or whatever? You know, I guess that was kind of the feeling, is that it was beneficial to add language that says, hey, look at what your demand is and stuff, and whether or not you can provide, but it wasn't necessary to provide both formats.
But on the flip side, the librarians would work hard at like providing another resource. So
Yep.
saying the public library can offer it, or the East Helena Library has it available. So just that connection between the librarian and they have other sources that they can reach out to get the other.
Right. Because I think we struck language regarding interlibrary loans and stuff so that there was some flexibility. Any other questions?
I noticed that you wholesale removed the section, except for a couple sentences related to maintenance. And I see that the librarians are responsible for maintaining their individual libraries. But could you expand on the thought process behind removing that language?
I guess that's maybe what I was referring to. I think the general consensus was that it was duplicative.
Okay.
Maintenance included all of those things, and elaborating and enumerating them specifically made it seem sort of pedantic pointless.
Well, there's an MCA quoted there as well, and, you know, I mean, if you follow our MCA, it doesn't necessarily need to be in policy, so. That seemed to be unnecessarily, yeah.
Like in terms of how to get rid of things, right, the MCA says it, so
Okay.
don't repeat it.
Don't have no problem with it, just want to make sure that that was the
That was
background
wrong.
behind it.
We're not suggesting they shouldn't get rid of things that are damaged beyond repair, but rather that would be implied.
Okay.
Other than that.
Okay.
I don't remember, does the policy imply that we wouldn't have any pornographic or explicit material or sexually explicit material in our books, in our libraries?
It doesn't state it, but it's the law.
Is it, okay,
So
so
the
it's
way
there
that
one way or the other?
it talked about was it's and kind of in line with the curriculum that's taught at the schools. Is kind of how the policy reads, is that we're gonna follow what's in line with the curriculum.
Yeah, so materials shall support and be consistent with the general educational goals of the state and district. Selection of library materials with professional tasks conducted by library staff. So there's, I mean, it's well implied that that's, I mean.
So you wouldn't have any sexual education curriculum books in the library?
If you have sex ed in your curriculum, it's feasible that you could have books in your library that support the curriculum at that school, right?
Well, and there was a good note made by one of the librarians that the different grade levels, it's potentially not age appropriate for others. You know, I mean, at the high school, those that, you know, ninth graders may not be able to handle what seniors can. And so there was a discussion there where there's education done by the librarians that, you know, there are things in the library that you may see that, you know, there may be immature responses to, I guess is the way that it was brought up. But, you know, it all supports, you know, the curriculum. It's kind of hard to say, you know, the seniors only section. So I really felt like the librarians, they were asking for the extra language, the more
guidance,
robust guidance, and, you know, didn't feel wrong in giving it to them, I guess, in that. So other than cleaning up some of the language that we thought was extra and unnecessary.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the changes to policy 2309, or actually adopt policy 23.
First reading.
Under first reading.
I'll make a motion to adopt policy 2309 under first reading.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Stacy. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Now we'll go on to the next one, which is policy 2314, which goes into the instructional library material review, which is kind of a sister policy to 2309.
Yeah, so right now, if we were to get a challenge or complaint specifically about library materials, we would have to rely on policy 1700, which is a uniform complaint procedure, which is a very generalized procedure for managing any type of complaint. This policy is, the basis of it was recommended model language from School Boards Association if a district wants to adopt a more prescriptive procedure. So this is, these two policies together are part of what we talked about in the July board meeting and decided we wanted some librarian input before moving forward on them. So that's why they're coming back around now under unfinished business in October. So the committee looked pretty hard at this language in here, made some adjustments. I think one of the things that we were most comfortable with in here and appreciated the most about this language versus the uniform complaint procedure is item number 1 on the first page, that a parent or guardian of a student enrolled in the district may bring a request to consider any single instructional or library material. So that describes who basically has standing to bring a complaint to our libraries. Somebody who has a vested interest in what's in there because they're a parent or a guardian of a student enrolled in the district. And then we made some adjustments to other language in here. You know, we made some minor adjustments to how many of these types of complaints we could have going at one time. We haven't dealt with one in a significant amount of time, but wanted to just kind of sharpen our pencils to be prepared to handle that situation with dignity and have a roadmap if something came forward that we needed to address.
Is going from 3 to 2, is this complaints against a single thing, or is this just complaints in a lot of...
2 active complaints.
Okay.
So if we had 2 of these going at one time and a third one comes in, we're gonna say, okay, we'll deal with that, but we've gotta wrap up these 2 first so that we don't get spread really thin. Yeah.
Okay, one of the significant changes in here I think we made is that the review committee is going to read, read whatever the subject of the complaint is. So if it were to be let's take for instance, if someone were to challenge the Harry Potter books, that will take some time, to read through all of those different volumes, because that does come into play as that we're looking at. It could be a subscription, it could be a volume, it could be a single. So anyway, there's also some discussion about what kind of material would be the first response, and really it was targeted to give it, like Dan said, a roadmap on how to deal with it, separate from the uniform complaint, because this is kind of a different animal. So it was a good discussion. We had
really good.
It was quite a while to wordsmith this one through.
I'm not going to necessarily advocate for it, but I wanted to get the pulse, and I'm gonna throw Brooke a little bit under the bus. Yep, time for you to go to work. Under item number 1, page 1 of it, it would be line item 21. States a parent or guardian of a student enrolled in the district may bring a request to reconsider any single blah, blah, blah. Was there any consideration of empowering or giving agency to the students themselves? I know that this could open up a can of worms, especially if a student chose to do it maliciously or, just as a antagonistic, if you will. But, Brooke, what are your thoughts? Would empowering the students to be able to monitor some of that, would there be value to that? Would we see it?
I think so. Because, yeah, I think that they would, monitoring those types of things would be meaningful. Sorry, I'm reading all of this.
That's all right. No, that's fine. Take your time, and I understand what you're saying.
I think, can I add to your malicious part? I think we did that same with parent and guardian, kind of minimizing any type of maliciousness by number 6. They have to follow up. They have to do a formal request. It's not just a complaint and then here we open up this process to do it. It has to go through a formal process so that, and that was kind of part of it, so that we wouldn't just get willy-nilly complaints. If they're serious about it, then they're gonna follow through with the process of it. So I think if we did add students, that would cut down on some of the malicious act of it, is they would have to know they have to go through a process.
So was your question, Brooke, would there be value in having students be able to lodge a complaint?
Yes.
Should students be able to?
Instead of just saying a parent or guardian of a student enrolled in the district may bring a request, I would suggest making the change to just that part of the language would say, a parent or guardian of a student or a student enrolled in the district may bring a request to reconsider. And so that at that point in time, we're adding, and, because right now, the way it reads, a student, Brooke, could not make a formal complaint to the school district. It would have to be Brooke's parents if there was something that there was deemed, offensive or meeting the requirements that needed to be reviewed at least. And there again, I'm not advocating necessarily one way or the other, but I'm just wondering if there's value in empowering our students to be able to make some of those decisions for themselves. I always am a little bit concerned because we as adults always know better than the kids do until we don't. And then it's, well, I'm asking my daughters, what are we supposed to do here, type of a thing. And so there again, that was more for consideration for the board.
Can I suggest there might be a structural difference, which is that the student might be able to insulate themselves by not accessing that material. Whereas the parent or guardian has to use a third party. Like the parent or guardian isn't coming into the library to use it. Whereas the student could just not access the material.
I could see that, but.
I mean, that would be a structural difference that I can see.
But the only thing would be is that if that student believed that there was some type of negative ramifications from having that material in there, should it be, and I'm not saying removed, I'm saying reviewed.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know why this would be specific to the library. Like, why wouldn't it be all curriculum?
Well, that would be under policy 1700 then, though.
Could a student say, like, we're learning a terrible fraction?
Yeah, what's pi?
Yeah, exactly.
And those are good points.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
not advocating one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm not, that's a great point. And
they should be so busy, you shouldn't have time.
I can tell you from the committee meeting, we did not discuss that as potential. That didn't come up. It wasn't discussed. It was targeted for parents, guardians to minimize potential outside or non.
Yeah, under the old one, they could have, because it was anyone.
Yeah, it was anyone, so.
That's true.
No, I love the language, don't get me wrong. I love the language of that one.
I think Stacy's got a good point, that there are steps, there has to be some investment, so I personally don't see an issue with opening it up and empowering that. I think the one keynote is here is that during a challenge is that the material does remain in circulation, so you can't just challenge it, work at it, and then wait for that 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, I mean, who knows how long it takes, so you can't just get it pulled off the shelf immediately. It's it's still gonna be in there, still gonna be used, so it can't be used as a tool for that malicious intent there. So there's some controls for that. I don't know, I'm open to adding that language.
Katie, I think you knew that I was gonna ask you the same response, so.
I would just say, in hearing the discussion you've had about that in particular, and granted it would look a lot different, say at Radley, for a kid to challenge a book versus a high schooler, right?
Absolutely.
So if a kid has ever brought a book to me in grades 3 through 5 that they say they don't like, or why is this picture in here, I just tell them to pick a different book, right? It's just that easy. But if there was a kid invested in challenging something because they felt like for the greater good it doesn't belong there, and it does empower them to do so. However, students can also ask for books to be added to our collection, right? So there's going to be someone else in the school that says, but you added that because we wanted it, right? And then you have this one that says, and that's all part of that process that you then go through to come to a determination. But yeah, I'm not sure that I have a yes, students should, or even no, they should.
I think, to me, what you just said actually kind of reinforces what I'm saying, is that we give students the ability to request specific titles, but we don't give them the opposite empowerment to be able to ask for something to be considered for review and removal, perhaps. So, yeah, Mark.
Well, in my life, senior in high school, we were reading some story, and I said to the teacher, I think this is probably not appropriate for mixed company. And he suggested that I wasn't mature enough to handle it, and I was free to leave, which I did. And then he went on and say, well, that guy's gonna get an F. And believe me, he didn't reduce my grade hardly at all.
You already get it.
This is like the Miller's Tale?
But English was not my forte. But at any rate, it took care of it. The student, I mean, from that, because he was continually getting deeper into the weeds, I guess, and that took care of it. He didn't want to go, he didn't want, I mean, the student took care of it. He didn't want parents there, he didn't want a school board, he just wanted to get, you know, to summer and, and vacation. And so I think it's appropriate that, because really, what am I gonna tell my parents? I mean, if I tell them something so that they get offended for me, they're gonna be way more aggressive than they need to be because it isn't their experience. They're just protecting their kid. And so oftentimes I think the student has, if they're willing to be too immature to handle those things and have the guts to do that, I would much rather it happen in the classroom than in the boardroom.
So I'm hearing we want to adjust some language.
Let's make a motion to approve policy 2314, and then I'll turn around and amend that, if that works. I would entertain a motion to approve the language of policy 2314 under first reading. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion from Stacy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mark Deal. Okay. And then I would like to amend that motion. I'd like to amend that motion to add the following language under line item 21. It's add a parent or guardian of a student or a student enrolled in the district.
Got it.
May bring a request to reconsider any city instructional, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the amendment? Any questions or comments from the public on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment to policy 2314 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Now we will have we've got a motion on the table to 2314, to approve 2314 at a first reading, and this time it will be as amended. Any questions or comments from the board?
Do you have to correct any errors, spelling errors, or extra number errors?
Are there?
Line 16 has 23,111, 2311 plus a 1, so unless there's supposed to be a dash in there, it's like got 2 ones, 23,000.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's editorial, so we won't have to make an amendment for that.
Yeah.
Perfect,
Good catch.
I got it.
Any additional questions or comments from the board? Question or comments from the public?
Thanks for including the librarian team and instructional coaches in your discussions. Yeah.
Thank you for participating. I mean, it's crucial that you guys have your input, so thank you. Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve 2314 as amended, please, under first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries, and this will be followed up at our next meeting. And then our third and final policy review is number 3630, for cell phone usage.
Yeah, so again, this is model policy that was shipped out by School Board Association. You may recall the letter from Governor Gianforte that came out right before school started regarding student cell phone use. I forwarded that to you guys, as well as this model policy that followed very shortly thereafter from the School Boards Association, designed to help schools make adjustments if necessary in response to the governor's letter. In that note, Chris Goss indicated that, in their opinion, at School Boards Association, option 2 of this policy most closely reflected what they saw as the governor's intent in his letter. And so the policy committee is recommending option 2 with the changes that are indicated in the second paragraph. And we did have input from teachers and administrators in our conversation about this, and felt like this language most closely supports our current practice and what is in our student handbooks. We did have one teacher come to the committee and speak pretty passionately about her class at the high school, and the fact that the content that she teaches, she frequently asks students to use their phone to access information, and so she felt like she had a really good understanding and relationship with students and their use of their devices in her room, and that it wasn't intrusive, and that it in fact supported her instruction. So that was, I think, a unique perspective for us to hear at that point in time. I will say that reading some of the recent press releases, comments, and news articles surrounding, and just actually posts and social media from the governor himself about student cell phone use, I'm a little skeptical that this option 2 is totally in line with the governor's intent. I think he's envisioning something even more restrictive. But going under the advice of School Boards Association, this is a good option for us to choose at this time. Scott and Terrell know the governor was offering to come out here for a roundtable meeting and discussion with trustees, teachers, community members about a week ago, and it just, the mechanics of it just weren't coming together for us to actually make that happen. But it could be an opportunity in the not so distant future. They left the door open that he might still be interested in coming back on another day. So.
Okay, so before the board, we have adoption of policy 3630. I would entertain a motion to approve that policy, option 2, under first reading.
I'll make a motion.
Motion from Stacy, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Martin. Questions or comments from the board? I've got something for the committee. I noticed that you removed the wholesale changes to any type of enforcement. The unauthorized use as grounds for confiscation of device, student, et cetera, et cetera. I guess my question would be, is that we've got a policy here, but do we have any stick?
We left it up to each
Student handbooks.
student handbook, yeah,
Okay.
and how they were going to enforce.
So it's handled differently at the middle school than it is at the high school, than it is at Radley, than it is at Prickly Pear. It's not really much of an issue at Prickly Pear, but and so based on the maturity level of the kids, the developmental ability, the way that some teachers might actually need kids to access those devices in the classroom, it's different by building, and the consequences are different by building, but the administrators did present some of that, and we felt like, I guess, speaking for the committee, that the language just wasn't really necessary because of what was already in our handbooks.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I just wanted to make sure that we don't have a policy that doesn't have any type of teeth in it.
Yep.
Because then at that point, it doesn't do us much good. Any other questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public?
Okay,
Yes, please.
I recently started studying at Helena Public Schools as well, and it was interesting to me to watch the dynamic change. Firstly, I should say that I love that middle school does not have them anymore. I think that that has made a world of difference. I think the high school, it runs a little bit differently, so that depends, kind of on the teacher, kind of on the classroom. But in Helena, the way that they have their 7-period-a-day schedule, there's just no time for them to be on their phones. They are boom, boom, boom. They have to get their work done quickly. And I saw so much less usage of cell phones in the high school than I do here. Just an observation.
Thank you. Did you have her name from?
Danny Mitchell.
Danny, yeah. I just want to make sure that you, that.
I got it, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve option 2, under policy 3630, under first reading, say aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries, and we'll revisit this at our next meeting. Okay, there we go. The 11th and final item under new business, an information item on the Montana Environmental Trust Group meeting.
Yes, this is the annual informational meeting with the trust. Most of the stakeholders will discuss or present at this meeting. All members of the public and people affected by the EPA cleanup in East Helena are invited and welcome to attend. School board members in particular might have an interest. You can Zoom into it. I guess I printed this email and put it in the supporting documents, but I didn't send it to you guys, did I? I will send that to you, so you have the actual Zoom link to click if you want to follow along. The physical meeting in person is at the METG headquarters, which is the quadruple wide trailer house over on the way to Moontown, just straight west of American Kemet between the tracks over there. So kind of by the old rodeo grounds.
I've never heard that.
Moontown? You never been to Moontown?
I've been there, but I didn't know it was called that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's Ben? What?
Jeez, bunch of newbies here.
That's where I grew up, Moontown. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Moontown.
Moontown?
I don't know why it's called Moontown, it's just, it's always been called Moontown.
What's it called, Moontown?
What is moonshine through there?
Oh, there you go. Okay. See, now I know.
Thank you. That's why we have February 27th, 227 Day established, so that everybody can be informed
On
of
the
these crucial
history,
items, John. So I'm assuming you're going to be the next guest lecturer on
Moontown.
On Moontown.
I already have a guest lecturer, and it's not me. You know why it's called Moontown? I don't. I mean, it just always was.
Okay, with that, that will conclude this evening's meeting of the East Helena School Board. And our next scheduled meeting is, regularly scheduled meeting is November 11th, 2024 at East Valley Middle School. And we do no longer need the special meeting for October 28th. So, that concludes our meeting. Thank you for all attending.
I heard you.